So welcome back. Our next session, Embedding Outcomes in Financial Regulations, will now focus on outcomes. We will discuss with our distinguished panelists how investors understand investing for sustainability outcomes in the context of their legal duties and the challenges, if any, they face. We'll also touch on ideas for policy reforms to bring investing for sustainability impact into the mainstream of responsible investment. We have therefore invited investors as well as policymakers to this session. Before we start, you have the chance to ask questions, and I do encourage you to do so. So there is a question tab next to the presentation, which you will find if you exit full screen mode, and you will find it next to on the side of your screen. We will allow for questions at the end of the session, hopefully. My name is Juliane Hilf, and I have the honor of being a co-author of the Freshfields study, which is called A Legal Framework for Impact, and which was commissioned by UNPRI, UNEP FI, and the Generation Foundation. This session builds on this report, and to give you an idea what it is about, we will start by showing you a short video.
What if, as an investor, you could see the next crisis coming?
Would you still go about business as usual?
What if you could take action to improve your portfolio's impact on the environment, communities, and economies?
What if you could support solutions to society's biggest challenges and share in the prosperity created?
Despite being a powerful driver in shaping our economy, capital markets are still not equipped to manage systemic risk and create positive change.
The Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Climate Agreement set out the path to a sustainable economy. They are the best blueprints for not only a livable, but a brighter future.
There's no question that we've experienced a leap forward in progress in sustainable and responsible mainstream investing. But investors do not yet systematically consider their role in shaping sustainability outcomes.
A paradigm shift towards investing for sustainability impact is upon us.
This is a new frontier for investors and policymakers to navigate together.
Thankfully, investment leaders are already making progress, like committing to net zero targets and working together to achieve their goals through stewardship, policy, and capital allocation.
But those leaders encounter tensions between increasing positive outcomes and concerns about how far they can go and are permitted to go.
This is what the report, A Legal Framework for Impact, written by Freshfields in partnership with UNEP FI, PRI, and Generation Foundation, sets out to answer.
When can investors seek to achieve positive impacts on people and planet? And how does that relate to delivering a financial return?
What they found is that investors can invest for sustainability impact, and in many cases, they're required to do so.
The report also identified many areas for possible intervention by policymakers committed to creating an investment sector fully empowered to pursue sustainability goals to achieve financial objectives or as an end in themselves.
We can see the next crisis coming as we can see the changes that can shift our economies to a better path.
This report looks at what investors can do and how policymakers could help to ensure the investment sector is ready and enabled to protect people, planet, and profit.
Visit our website to learn more.
As Fiona just said, today indeed is about what investors can do and how policymakers can help to ensure the investment sector is ready to enable to protect people, planet, and profit. Our report is a legal analysis, and we have analyzed the legal framework in 11 jurisdictions around the world as to whether the law currently permits or requires investors to invest for sustainability impact, in short, IFSI, because it's a lot easier to pronounce. IFSI is about intentionally seeking to influence investee companies in ways that improve environmental and social sustainability outcomes in accessible ways. In short, we found that while there are differences, of course, across jurisdictions and across investor groups, in circumstances where IFSI approaches can be effective in achieving an investor's financial goal, thus instrumental in achieving the financial return goal, the investor will likely be required to consider using them and act accordingly. There are also instances in most jurisdictions where investors are permitted to pursue sustainability goals for their own sake in parallel to financial goals, thus as an end in themselves, usually thus, though, subject to prioritizing financial goals. In addition, one important aspect is that IFSI has the potential to create a multiplier effect via collaboration between investors. Sustainability risks are very often systemic risks, and they can be dealt with a lot more effectively when acting together. Therefore, the possibility of collective action and other sorts of coordinated activity is likely to be an important factor for investors considering IFSI. Let me give you just one example before we start our discussion. An investor could try to influence and address climate change because doing so is instrumental to its ability to generate a financial return. It could also try to use its influence to address climate change or any other sustainability goal for a reason not linked to returns, thus because he just believes this is the right thing to do. This sort of purposeful investing is growing in popularity, and understanding whether there is a legal barrier to do so is essential. And indeed, in our report, we have identified a number of legal barriers to IFSI. One example being that investors have to act in the best interest of their beneficiaries, and such interest is widely still interpreted as being a financial interest. Our report also lists policy options that would further enable IFSI activities going forward, which could include, for example, clarifying investors' legal duties and discretions, such as explicitly allowing for the pursuit of sustainability goals as long as financial returns goals are prioritized. And as another example, a presumption in favor of investor collaboration in tackling sustainability challenges. So this is the legal framework, and I'm very much looking forward now to discussing with investors as well as policymakers on how, in practice, investors are already today taking steps to invest for sustainability impact, what barriers they face, and what they thus need in terms of policy reform to enable them to invest for sustainability impact. And on the other hand, what policymakers are doing to encourage and facilitate investing for sustainability impact. So that being said, we cover 3 jurisdictions today, which is Canada, the UK, and the EU. And we'll start with Canada, because C comes first in the alphabet. I'm pleased to be joined by Michael Torrance, Vice President, Chief Sustainability Officer of the BMO Financial Group, and by Kathy Bardswick, Chair of the Sustainable Finance Action Council. Kathy, to you first. So with COP26 approaching, action to deliver on the Paris Agreement goals is the topic that looms large for policymakers and investors. And it's only a few days left before COP26. So tackling climate change is a big priority for you as well. Can you tell us how you see the role of SFAC and other policymakers and regulators in supporting investors in addressing climate change and other sustainability outcomes of their investments?
So good morning, all. You can see by my background that it is very early morning in Canada, where I'm sitting. And thank you for inviting me to this. I think, you know, the focus on now impact and outcome and measurement is so critically important as we pivot to, I hope, spending additional time and energy ensuring that we're actually getting the impact and the outcomes that our targets and our aspirations are calling for. So on that note, let me first say that I'm not technically a policymaker. SFAC, the Sustainable Finance Action Council, is not a government body per se. We were established in the spring of this year by 2 sponsoring ministries, the Ministry of Finance federally and Environment and Climate Change Canada, to bring together the 25 largest financial players in the country, the largest banks, the largest in pension plans, and the largest insurance companies, both life and non-life, to work together with public policy agendas in ensuring that there was alignment and coordination in a more effective way as we all turned our attention to ensuring that we were getting the outcomes that we all want to achieve, need to achieve if we're to realize those targets. And so the Sustainable Finance Action Council really was established to help drive a more robust and sustainable finance ecosystem in the country. And I think the government, in establishing SBAC, recognized that level of coordination and alignment of objectives and pathways to seeing the success that we all are aspiring to achieve fundamentally required a closer and more coordinated effort between private finance and public finance. And so, as I said, this SBAC was established to do so. And I think what is really encouraging already, seeing that we've only been established for a few months now, is in fact, the level of interaction and of a discourse and conversation and alignment of agendas between the public policy providers and those 25 organizations that have agreed to roll up their sleeves and work within the context of SBAC. So I think in establishing it, I think we all understand now how important it is to ensure that we are directing the appropriate amount of capital to the appropriate targets within the required timeframes. I think we all get it. We all get not only the challenges associated with the journeys that we're on as countries and globally, but we also get it that we want to leverage the opportunities as economies. And so I think what SBAC has been charged with, and I'll share that in a second, is ensuring that, as I said earlier, our efforts now are really razor focused on, in fact, those outcomes and how Canada is going to be able to leverage those opportunities and address the challenges that the country faces given the unique nature of our economy. SBAC was given 3 major areas of focus to work on. The first one was and is to focus on TCFD-based mandatory disclosure for the country, and I'll return to that in a minute. The second area was transition financing and taxonomy within that transition finance area of focus. And within that, our mandate includes better understanding the state of play, including developing KPIs. So how will we measure success? And then finally ensuring that the guidelines and the frameworks and the taxonomies are appropriate for the country. And then finally addressing data is our third area of focus. And so I think to your question, why establish SBAC? What do we want to accomplish? I think the short answer is really ensuring that we're rowing in the same direction in terms of the public policy efforts underway and the private finance objectives and efforts that are underway.
Thank you, Casey. I understand that there's a so-called official sector coordinating group of regulators. So can you explain us a bit kind of what role this plays and kind of how you would work together with them in order to advance policy reforms going forward?
Sure. So the official sector coordinating group is really comprised of both the federal and the provincial prudential regulators, the securities commissions in the country, the 2 ministries, the 2 sponsoring ministries, as I mentioned, and the Bank of Canada. And as I said a moment ago, if alignment is going to happen appropriately and effectively, and if we're going to all be rowing in the same direction, then we need these formal governance engagements and connections. And so this official sector coordinating group that's been established to work with us and does on a regular basis compare agendas, share progress, where we can support each other's agendas is a critically important component of the overall governance of SBAC. And I mentioned in my first comment, I want to come back to an example that actually is playing out in the country this week. On Monday, our securities regulators released a draft rule associated with mandatory disclosure. On Tuesday morning, SBAC was sitting down with the regulators to better understand and share how best to support the consultation work that's underway in support of that mandatory disclosure journey that we're on as a country. And so I think this is an excellent example